everyone, it's time for us to go and take a look at the iPad 8th generation and see how this particular iPad holds up in 2024. Now, the thing I will tell you about this iPad is that it's still a very decent iPad for the most part, but it's a little weird because the successor of this iPad, which was the iPad 9, is still being sold, brand new by Apple in a lot of different places, but it was just such a good iPad, the iPad 9, that I would probably recommend go buying that one over this thing, but I still think this thing is a very good iPad too. If you want to pick up any iPad I would recommend buying though, links will be down in the description. You can get that from there and you can help support the channel at the same time. Now, starting off with the outside of the iPad 8th generation, this particular iPad looks very good. It still looks pretty decent for the most part, even though it has a lot of bezel in the home button. You're getting that 10.2-inch Retina IPS LCD panel on the front. Now, this panel definitely is not that great of a screen. I think a lot of people, and I would probably say a lot of people would look at the screen and you would understand that it's not that great of a panel anymore. It is fairly outdated. It is an outdated panel, for the most part, but it's not like an ugly screen, and I think it doesn't really look that bad for what you're getting. Now, on top of that, with this type of display, it's, you get a true tone display a little bit, which is cool, but it doesn't get that bright. But around the display, that's where you have the bezel. You have a top bezel, bottom bezel with the home button. Now, usually with home button devices like iPhones, I would say avoid them because they're outdated. But the thing with these iPads is that you are actually getting kind of like the gesture-based design on these iPads. So that is something that's actually really nice. You can swipe up, you can maneuver around with the gestures on these iPads, and that's something that I actually prefer a lot on these types of devices because you don't have to go through and actually just go ahead and just click on that home button over and over and over again. You can use the gestures and kind of move around with it. So that is something I actually like a lot about these iPads. Beyond that though, it's totally okay. If you don't want to buy this, like I said, there's better ones out there, but it's not a bad option. And it's actually, I think it's a pretty decent iPad if you're trying to go ahead and buy it from the display standpoint, but it's not that good, but it's good for the price tag if you kind of know what I'm talking about. On the bottom of this thing, you're getting that lightning port and you're getting a headphone jack. Now, the thing here is that with the lightning port, clearly, as I would always say, USB-C is better. I prefer having USB-C over a lightning port, but still I think lightning is okay. And if you have a lot of lightning accessories, if you have lightning toggles and that kind of stuff, then you're probably okay with something like the lightning port on this iPad. But as I mentioned before, keep in mind, if you are going through and buying something like the newer iPad, you're probably going to have a better time with, current generation iPad with USB-C over lightning, but it's still okay no matter, it's just semantics here. On the back side, standard aluminum back, which looks very good. I like this, and that's something I like a lot about it. You're getting that camera on the top left, and overall, it's a pretty good iPad. For the outside, it still feels fairly expensive. It doesn't really feel that cheap. And I do think that if you're going to go ahead and buy an iPad, this is a fairly decent option. I like these iPads a lot. Of course, they're not perfect, but I do think they get the job done for the most part. And I definitely do think if you're in the market, I would recommend, buying this iPad if you really want to be honest. Now, the price tag of this iPad is a little bit interesting as well, because it doesn't cost as much as it used to. These iPads weren't really that expensive when they first came out. They're probably available for less than $200 all over the place. Probably closer to $130, $140. And that's a decent price to pay for an iPad. The thing about this iPad is that it does support Apple Pencil 1, which is really nice. So you can go and plug the Apple Pencil 1 in this thing. So if you're a student, if you need to use it, then you can. But the price tag of this thing allows you to buy this and the Apple Pencil, maybe some other accessories, for less than a brand new iPad that costs nowadays. So kind of just keep that in mind too. It's just one of those things to kind of keep in mind in the back of your head. But regardless, I'm still a fan of this iPad when it comes down to it for the most part. So that kind of covers it up there. Now, from the camera standpoint, this thing has a single 8-megapixel standard camera on the back and a 1.2 megapixel standard camera on the front. The thing I like about this camera is that it is a very, very okay camera for even how old this iPad is. It was basically like an iPhone 6 camera at that time. So that's just kind of what happens with this type of iPad, is that you're basically getting an outdated camera nowadays. No matter which way I could put it, it's really not going to be that great of a camera. And that is going to kind of be the problem with this type of device. So once again, I would hate to recommend an iPad to people where it's already outdated in the camera standpoint, and that is precisely what's going on here. So you are basically getting an outdated camera. It's not the end of the world, it's not that big of a deal, but once again, just one of those minor things to keep in mind, that if you're wanting a better iPad or a better performing iPad, this one is going to be kind of outdated when it comes down to it. So that is an outdated camera, but if you're trying to do Snapchat videos or whatever, it might be okay. But on an iPad, you're not really using a camera. If you have an iPhone 6s or newer, that iPhone is going to be giving you a better experience than this type of iPad. So it's kind of up to you. I personally am okay with whatever, but this type of camera is definitely giving you not that great of an experience when it comes down to it. So that right there is another big thing to kind of keep in mind there in terms of the software and longevity. this phone is pretty much, this iPad is still supported with software right now, but I don't know how much longer it's going to be supported. There's a chance it may get iPadOS 18. There's a chance it may not. So once again, I would hate to recommend an iPad to people where it's done or it's almost done getting software support. Usually Apple will kind of lengthen the lifespan of a lot of these iPads. So if you were to go ahead and buy an iPad today like this one, even though an iPhone with that chipset may be outdated, the iPad of that same chipset may still be supported with software. So this iPad may still be good to go for the next couple of years, we don't know. But just to be on the safe side, I will say it's going to last the rest of 2024, but I don't know about 2025. So I could probably safely say that if you're going to buy this iPad today, it might still be supported for the next year, but it's not going to be supported for an insanely amount of time after that. So once again, just kind of keep that in mind. I don't want to recommend these phones to people if it's going to be outdated, but I don't really think it's going to be that outdated here. So kind of keep that in mind here as well. But beyond that, still a very, very good iPad. Still supported. I'm very happy about that. From the performance chipset side, this thing has that Apple A12 Bionic chip inside of it with 3 gigabytes of RAM. So this type of chipset is basically the same thing that we have inside of the iPhone XR and XS Max. So those phones are also still supported with software. So you are still getting I would say you're still getting a very decent performing chipset on this thing, which is very, very good. Now, the thing with the RAM, it's basically like the iPhone XR's performance inside of this device. So that can be kind of an annoying thing for some people. Like if you're buying this type of phone, you're not really going to be getting like the craziest performing type of phone for the most part, or the craziest performing iPad for the most part, and that can be kind of an annoying thing for some people. I personally do think though that with this type of iPad, you're still getting like a very, very good performing, device for the most part, which is very good. For students, like if you're a student and you're going through and using this iPad, I think you're going to be perfectly fine. You're going to be in good hands. This is going to be, for writing documents and using that Apple Pencil to take notes and stuff, I think it's going to be very, very decent. And that's kind of what these iPads are good for. These older, cheaper ones, I think are great for students because you can just put them in your book bag and you can walk around with them and then you can kind of move on with your life. I would say for like working professionals, like if you're trying to go ahead and use this iPad to like edit a bunch of videos or you're doing, insane things with it, it might be a little bit more of a complicated situation, more of a complicated scenario. Because once again, I would hate to recommend people to buy this phone if it's already going to be kind of like, a bad performing device. And I would say for those group of people, it may not be the best. But for students, I think it actually is a pretty decent performing device when it comes down to it. So to kind of sum up this video, what I would definitely tell you is I do think the iPad 8th generation is still worth buying for many people out there. It wouldn't be the first device I would recommend every single person to buy, but I would say like for the most part, like if you're in the market and if you want to go ahead and buy a device, it's really not that bad. I've definitely seen a lot worse iPads out there, but if you do have the option to, I would probably recommend going up to something like the iPad 9th generation. I do think that is a way better iPad than this thing, and the iPad 10 is better, the iPad Pros are better, but like the iPad 9 seems like a suitable step, and I'd recommend going up to that one over something like the iPad 8, but I still think the 8th generation is decent for what you're getting for the most part as well. So that kind of covers it up there. If you have any other thoughts or questions, please let me know in the comment section below. Hit the like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.